quarterly stage shows. So if some of you have seen some of the PBS shows over the years, like Doo-Wop 50 and Doo-Wop 51, well, our shows were very similar to that. And then in Arizona, there's a group down in Phoenix called RCA, nothing to do with the record label. That stands for Record Collectors of Arizona. And that's a group that used to meet bi-weekly to play, believe it or not, 45 RPM records and CDs. And we discussed the early days of rock and roll. And then I enjoyed that so much, I helped start up here where I live, actually in Payson, a similar type club that met monthly, although we covered all types of popular music over the last 70 years. And what made it neat when we were meeting at people's homes is we had the ability to watch YouTube-related music videos. And from a technology-related point of view, I'm now the president and treasurer of T.U.G. I help coordinate all the activities for a computer club in Payson. And I used to teach 3 different computer classes at the Eastern Arizona College Payson campus, although that came to an abrupt halt when the pandemic hit. And even those 2 music listening clubs that I mentioned that I'm part of, they stopped with the pandemic because we could no longer meet in person and had to worry about things like social distancing. But I'm not going to let a global pandemic stop me. So what I did was I created the opportunity for both those clubs to continue via Zoom. So I have a Zoom Pro account and I host the meetings, and those attending take the turn sharing their screen, and we play either audio or video files. And again, talk about the music. So that, I have to admit, has kept me sane over the last year as far as still being able to have my contact. So if anybody's interested, I've created an 18-minute video explaining in detail how the process works. So if any of you may want to start something like that along similar lines where you live, if you contact me, I'll be happy to send you the link to that video and even host your first meeting to help you guys get off the ground. Now, talking with Scott a little bit, I know he knows all about Tech for Seniors every Monday morning, so I'm sure everybody else there does too, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, other than to say that this weekly meeting that started about a year ago now, we're coming up on our 52nd weekly meeting. We had maybe 10 to 12 people originally, and now we reach our limit of 100 every Monday morning. So it's being simulcast as on our YouTube channel as well. But there's the meeting ID, no password required. Starts now coming this Monday because of daylight savings time changing, standard time changing back to daylight savings time this weekend. The meetings will now begin at 9 a.m. Arizona time. Arizona Daylight Savings Time. Don't be late because the meeting is locked 1 minute after the hour. I can say now that usually by about a quarter to the hour, there's enough people that are in the Zoom meeting that we have to lock it because we've reached our capacity. All right, music is forever. Music should grow and mature with you, following you right up until you die. That's a quote from Paul Simon. And I'm sure that's a true statement for the majority of people. But for me, rarely a day goes by that at some point I'm not listening to the music of my youth. So yeah, I'm sorry, folks, that I never grew up. Talking about Paul Simon and Simon and Garfunkel, I'm not going to ask people to yell out, but think in your mind, do any of you know the name that this duo used in 1957, long before they were Simon and Garfunkel? And the answer is, they call themselves Tom and Jerry. And there's the song, Hey Schoolgirl, reached number 49 on the pop charts in late 57. So Simon and Garfunkel actually had known each other since their Queens, New York City elementary school days. That's how long they've been friends. And while there were several follow-up songs, some as the duo Tom and Jerry, others individually, none generated any interest. So these teenage boys went back to focusing on what they must have thought would be their non-music future. So let's get a little listen of what Hey Schoolgirl sounded like.
Woo, Papa Lucha Pop, you're mine. Say, woo, Papa Lucha Pop, you're mine. Hey, schoolgirl in the second row. The teacher's looking over, so I gotta whisper way down low. You say, woo, Papa Lucha Pop, let's meet at the school
All right, on with the show. So I'm going to break this into really two parts. The first will be a review of our music listening habits over about the last 70 years, starting with the 78 RPM record. It was called the Victrola. That's what my mother used to call it when I was playing my records as a kid, all the way up to the compact disc. This is all the media that we would buy and have in our home. And we'll see how many of these different devices you folks remember. Maybe you even have them tucked away in the closet or the attic. And then we'll look at today's download and streaming offerings, the music clouds, owning versus renting music, and all the choices that are today available to listen to your favorite tunes. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Ray's Man Cave.
Well, hello there, folks. Since this presentation is titled How Technology Has Changed the Way We Listen to Music over the years, over about the last 70 years, I thought I'd show you that I actually have some of the different devices we used in that time frame. So we can start with the 78 RPM record. And here's my collection that I probably started collecting in 1956 and 57. Of course, I made a spreadsheet so I can know where the different records are. We then moved on to 45 RPM records, and I keep them there. And then, of course, the long play album over here is what most of us, probably many of you may still have. And then we moved into CDs, and the amount of CDs that we have here, this is my collection, and then my wife has her own collection over here. And then now we're into MP3s. I have many of them on my computer, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then some of the equipment we used over the years would include, of course, the turntable. This is a unique turntable, in fact, that I could put a disc on here, and I may demonstrate that, press a number, and then it'll automatically go and count the number of spaces between the tracks, and then if I press number 4, it would drop down automatically on the 4th track without me having to search for it. Before we started making copies of CDs on the computer, we actually had devices like this, where you could put the original in here and a blank over here, close them up, and then this would automatically make, let's give that a little help, would automatically make a copy of the disc. The old VHS player, this is one that'll actually convert it to a DVD. And then I talked a little bit about the computer.
All right, so before 1948 was a pivotal year. I'll talk about that in a minute. But before then, the phonograph was the way you played music in your home that you wanted to listen to, where you had a choice. That was invented way back in 1877 by none other than Thomas Alva Edison. And that led to the development over the years of the 78 RPM record. And really during the first half of the 20th century, that's what consumers would use if they wanted to listen to the music of their choice at home. Now, the 78 RPM was almost immediately a format with a need for improvement. The records were made of shellac, and that's why they could easily chip or shatter. And due to the weight of the tone arms on the early players, the recording grooves and thus the sound quality would deteriorate after many plays. Believe it or not, some consumers would add to this problem by taping a coin to the tone arm to help reduce skipping. That sound familiar to anyone? All right, so how does the 78 RPM record sound today?
Was around for probably the first 50 years or longer of the last century, and this was the media that people played in their homes so they could actually listen to the music of their choice. A lot of people, most folks listened to the radio, but they had little choice in what they were going to hear there as far as specifics. So here's, to me, is probably the breakthrough rock and roll vocal group song, and this is what changed for America music, not only for teenagers, but by teenagers. So this is the original Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. The record came out in 1956, We all know what year it is now. Let's see how this plays. So this particular device I picked up 10 years ago, so it plays at 78 RPM speed, but when they mail it to you, they only give you the stylus or the needle that will play a vinyl record. And what plays vinyl versus what plays at 78 RPM are very different. So I immediately went and changed the needle. So this is a 78 RPM needle. So not so bad for a record that's more than 60 years old. Still plays, and all of them in this box here will play as well.
Ever wonder why LP, standing for long play, LP records are called albums? Well, in the early days, classical releases, they were much longer than what a 78 could provide of 3 to 5 minutes each side. So what they would do is, say it was an hour-long symphony, they'd divide them into multiple discs, and then they'd be bound together in something resembling a photo album. And I'm always impressed that the word album, with respect to music sound recordings, has continued right into the 21st century. Another name for a musical CD, or sometimes people would say I had a full album download. So that's what an old 78 RPM record album looked like. This one could hold up to 10 individual records. Now, I don't want to forget about the radio. While record players in their early days were expensive, there were many people who couldn't afford them. But before 1948, most households had a radio, and after that initial cost, the music was free. And what was great about radio in its earliest days was it made available all types of music for all kinds of listeners. So before the 1960s, in a segregated America, phonograph records broadcast over the radio were available for everyone to hear. It only depended on where on the tuning dial the listener chose to stop. So in a small way, radio helped equalize the social classes. Both the poor and the rich could hear the great vocalists. And white listeners could hear Black music without fear of violating any of the current social day norms. In the mid-1950s, particularly in large urban cities, there were many a young white teenager with a transistor radio tucked under the pillow in the wee hours, listening to the transition of Black R&B into early rock and roll. Just ask me. All right, records become vinyl. This is a format war, and we thought format wars were only something in recent times. No, they've been going on for a long time. So Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS, in 1948 decided and came that it was time to improve the decades-old 78 RPM format, and they came up and introduced the LP album. Now, at the time, this was a big move for Columbia because their arch rival RCA Victor was the largest record label for distributing the 78 RPM records. So this was definitely a competition. And what were the benefits of the LP over the 78? Well, obviously greater sound fidelity, they weighed less, far less breakable, and by playing it at that slower speed of 33 to 3rd RPM, you could fit as much as 22 minutes of music on a side. Now, here's something most people don't realize, but those first early LP records were not 12 inches in diameter that we're all used to, but they were actually 10 inches in diameter. And my guess is that Columbia thought it best to keep the same size disc that the general public was already used to with at 78. But within a few years, the LP size was increased to 12 inches. They wanted to get more tracks on each side, and it's remained to this day. Although over the years, other sizes were tried, but none ever caught on. Well, then we had the little disc with the big hole in the middle, the 45 RPM record. So RCA Victor needed to compete from a sound quality perspective with Columbia and with the LP. So the following year, 1949, they introduced their format. And they had a big advantage, RCA did, because they also made the record players. So they would sell the record players at cost. Didn't want to make any profit on them, just to entice new buyers who would then go out and buy the 45 RPM record. And the benefits of a 45 over the LP, well, with about 3 inches of playing time on each side, this was the perfect length for the pop songs, or as we used to call them, the hillbilly songs of the day. And this disc was also ideal to replace 78s in the nation's jukeboxes, which were very popular at the time. So how many of you still have your 45s? Now, the 45 RPM came out with what was called the EP, the extended play, and that was 2 songs on each side. Now, interesting again, how the term EP has stayed around. Today, if a new artist doesn't have enough songs for a full album, they usually release for download maybe anywhere from 4 to 6 songs, and they call that an EP. So I love the fact that the term has been around for many years. And early rock and roll helped make the EP 45 RPM popular because of that 2 songs to each side. Now, typically, the EP came with a cardboard picture sleeve, just like the Big Brother LP. These EP record sleeves from the 1950s are worth much more today than the actual record. Elvis Presley continues to be one of the most collectible recording artists of all time, but he comes in second now to the top-selling solo artist of all time, and that is now Garth Brooks. But both Elvis and Garth are behind the Beatles, who continue to be the top-selling of all artists of all time. All right, how many can relate to this? When I was a kid, this is how we made a playlist. Okay, the 8-track tape arrives. I like to call this Have Music Will Travel. Unintended results. Bill Lear, who had his line of private jets, the Learjet, he actually invented this for his planes. And I can just see him saying to himself when he was done, hey, you know, this might work in cars. And the players were initially manufactured by a Ford Motor Company affiliate, thus making the name Motor Victrola into Motorola Corporation.
Mine was classic.
You're wrong.
No, you are.
No, you are.
Okay, next up, fans were not offered the game.
Try the Super C22 formula free for 2 weeks. Help you get to sleep faster, stay asleep longer.
That's how it is. G-I-N-S.
Come on, people now. Come on, you brother, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Hey, I think the mamas and the papas and the trips on Central in L.A. And they got a good thing going when the words go forever band. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. One lay beneath the lemon tree, my love had died at life. A girl so sweet that when she smiled, the stars rose in the sky. Always too much and nothing, nobody should love.
I forgot how big those 8-track tape cassettes were. Imagine carrying 10 of those in the car. All right, then we have the compact cassette. Really humble beginnings, because these started way back in 1963, and they were really only used for dictation recording due to the poor sound quality. Now, I just read yesterday that the gentleman who invented the cassette passed away at the age of 94. He was from Holland, and interesting what he was. And the reason he came to decide to invent the cassette was the night before he was trying to thread a reel-to-reel tape deck, and he couldn't do it. The tape was too thin, he couldn't get it to go. So he came in the next day into this company he owned and said, we're changing everything. I want you to come up with a better way of having tape being played. And that's the beginnings of why the compact cassette was invented. So in '63, it was really no good for sound, but by the '70s, the Dolby tape noise reduction system, Dolby B, as it was called, came into being, and this reduced greatly the tape hiss. So therefore, cassette tapes then were considered as hi-fi and a serious format for recording music. And it had staying power. I mean, home recording decks allowed consumers the ability to create what we used to call our mixtapes, the songs we wanted to hear. And surprisingly, continued improvements in tape quality and other features kept the cassette around as a popular format entering into the 21st century. Cars that were being built in the early 2000s still had cassette decks. So with the popularity of the cassette deck, what was next? The Sony Walkman. 1979, this unit sold over 200 million. This device sold over 200 million units. And it's considered at the time compact size made them conducive for music to jog by and a whole range of other kinds of outdoor activities. Sony's lead helped the cassette tape outsell vinyl records for the first time in 1983. Kind of remember that. Cassette tapes outsold vinyl, first time, 1983. And the popularity of the Walkman continued and for a decade, from about 1987 to 1997. But then with the introduction of the compact disc, the cassette format began to fade. However, the Walkman name stayed relevant for many years. It was an MP3 player, a phone, and even a portable DVD player. So music portability before the iPod was the Sony Walkman. Now, let me just mention a little bit about what you can do if you still have a bunch of your old cassette tapes. If they're what I'm calling mixtapes, where they're just music of the day, it's time to toss them out and replace that music with something more digitally involved. But let's say you have cassette tapes of, in my case, I had a couple of times I was being interviewed on the radio, and I had those recorded. I'd like to keep those. Other times it might be voices of people who have since passed away. Those become, one of a kind and priceless. So if you have those one of a kind tapes, here's a possible solution for you. In looking at the upper photo, that looks like that's a regular standard cassette player. If you look on the right-hand side, it has the controls for play, fast forward, and stop. But when I turn that same deck over on the bottom picture, on the left-hand side, you can see that the player has a connection where I can insert a flash drive. And then it's hard to read those little buttons, what they say, but those are buttons for being able to now play the cassette tape in the player, and it'll simultaneously record it as an MP3 file on that flash drive. The bottom right shows the same kind of a device, similar, but larger in more of like a boombox style. And this one can not only accommodate a flash drive, but also an SD card. All right, so the timelines for the compact disc from the beginning. That was about the mid-1970s, and it was two companies, Sony and Philips. They were involved in the research and development of what they call then, and today is still called, optical disc technology. Now, as I recall, the first commercial CDs that came out were very expensive. When I say expensive, I'm thinking $30, $35 a piece, and they consisted almost exclusively of classical music. But it didn't take long for the first pop albums to come out. 1982's Billy Joel's 52nd Street was one of the very first. And then within a year, there were lots of players and all kinds of older materials being reintroduced and re-released for sale on mass levels. And that brings us up to Dire Straits in 1985, became the first artist to sell 1 million CDs. But, and then Sony and Philips, again, banding together, created the CDR, the recordable CD that I'm sure many of us used. But starting in about 2008, that's going on 13 years ago, the large label CDs began to drop in their sales because at that time, people were interested in music downloads. So while it was still a popular format, ever since 2008, every year, CDs have continued to decline. In fact, and I'm going to talk about this in a bit, many new cars no longer offer a CD player. So do you copy CDs to your computer? I think that everybody should make the effort to do that, particularly if the CDs you really like, because you want to have them backed up. When you rip the CD, and that's the term that we use, when you rip the CD to your computer, it's to back up, and then you also organize your collection so an artist or a song can be found very, very quickly. You can make a copy of that CD and keep the original at home if you still want to play CDs in the car. Or you can move on a little bit closer to the 21st century, and you can make an MP3 data disk that contains hundreds or even thousands of your favorite songs, rather than taking along dozens of CDs in their jewel cases. You can move the music then onto your smartphone. Most newer cars allow you to play music from your smartphone, either through the car sound system by Bluetooth or the wired audio connection. And then many new cars now have the ability where you have a USB connector, and it can be voice operated. So while you're driving, you can voice activate what song you want to hear or what artist you want to hear. Now, how does a computer, and let me just move something over here a little bit. How does a computer know what songs are on a CD? Let's think about this. Music CDs were first introduced to the public long before the PC became standard in the home. So for all of these older compact discs in circulation, the data for the song title and the artist, they are not stored on that actual disc. So here's what happens. When you insert a CD in a computer, the metadata is automatically retrieved within seconds from an online database. And how does it know which one is the right one? Well, it compares the number of tracks and their individual times. So the chances of two different CDs having the same number of tracks and each track being exactly the same length of time, that's pretty remote. I guess it could happen, but that's pretty remote. So there's several online music databases that are used in this regard. Gracenote is probably the most popular. Now, in more recent times, because we're now playing CDs in cars, the artist and the track information have been encoded onto the CD. That's why when you put a CD in your car, a newer one, sometimes that information of the song title and artist will come up. But computers cannot read this CD text. So I tell people, I think you should take the time to rip your CDs, and I've walked down that road. All of my CDs have been ripped, and if I still get new ones, I take the time to put them on the computer.
So we're all familiar with compact discs. Here's one of my wife's favorites from an Oklahoma native, Garth Brooks. This is actually 8 full CDs in one box set. Everything you could possibly want to hear about from Garth Brooks. But did you know that on the commercial level, for a while, we were not inundated, but I gave them the opportunity to buy 3-inch CDs. This one is from Japan, where they were very popular, the Righteous Brothers, and they only had 4 songs on each 3-inch CD typically. The Japanese live in smaller residences than we do in America, so they needed to have something that wouldn't take up quite as much space. And then Rhino Records put out a whole bunch of these 3-inch CDs back in probably the 90s, and they never really caught on. But I like them. I like the idea of having this kind of media, so these are what the 3-inch CDs looked like.
Okay, the iPod leads the way to the popularity of portable music players, even more so than what we had in the past. It was an explosion. Everybody wanted an iPod. So they were first released by Apple in October of 2001. Believe it or not, the line continues in some form today, and basically it's an iPhone without the phone. So Apple's iTunes and other similar software provided the ability to transfer not only songs, but photos, videos, all kinds of computerized data to this and other portable devices. And then that brought along the advent of compressing music files. So it allowed consumers to create very large music libraries without using up enormous amounts of, at the time, precious storage capacity. So MP3 audio, making your entire music collection portable. So what is an MP3? Well, an MP3 is the audio compression subset of the moving pictures expert group family of standards. In other words, this is what the motion picture industry uses to on the audio side. And it's a process to compress to roughly 10% the size of the original audio recording file without noticeable loss of sound quality. So basically, if you had a music file that was 50 megabytes in size, if you converted it from, say, the WAV file that's on a typical CD to an MP3, it would only be 5 megabytes in size. But it's the people who the proponents of MP3s will tell you that while you lose some of the sound quality, it's only your dog that can hear it. That this is from the very high end and the very low end that the human ear cannot hear. On the other side of that is the audiophiles, and they typically disregard the MP3. And if you ever see the term lossless in looking at the ways to record music, lossless means it's the full fidelity, such as what is found on a commercial CD with no compression. So what was the impact of the MP3? Well, all of a sudden, these portable MP3 players could hold thousands of songs. And they were very popular, MP3 players were, until this feature became available in smartphones. And then you have the opportunity to make a data music disc. So when you take your songs that are on the computer and you create a compact disc of your own for it, you have a choice to make it either a audio CD, which is based on the amount of time, up to 80 minutes, or you can make it a data disc, which is based on the size up to 700 megabytes of songs. So if that's the case, when you make a data disc, you can have easily over 100 songs on one disc. And most recent car CD players, as well as home DVD and Blu-ray players, will play a CD data disc. Now, many of the newer cars have a USB connected that allows flash drives to be played in the cars. So again, you can bring thousands of songs. You can drive from here to New York and back and probably never hear the same song twice. So for a while, digital downloads were popular. In fact, that's what originally was what was replacing CDs. And going back to 2011, Nielsen and Billboard said that for the first time that year, that digital music purchases accounted for more than 50% of music sales. And for several years after that, the digital sales increased each year while the physical CD album sales continued to decline. iTunes Store, the Amazon Music Store, and others flourished, replacing music purchases we used to make from brick and mortar locations. And what are the benefits of a digital download? Well, they're more economical because you pay for only the songs you want. How many of us over the years went out to purchase a new LP that had 12 songs on it? We heard 2 or 3 on the radio, and then when we got it home to play, most of the other songs we were not that interested in. So typically when we had digital download, you could listen to a 30-second clip of a song before deciding if you wanted to make that purchase. And this is how new artists could showcase their work without the need for a full album. And providers such as Amazon, they had a neat feature. They would allow you to download the music, and then immediately you had available the ability to, with a going to a special website with a special code number, you could download all those songs on the computer. So even if you purchased a CD, you would have immediately the songs in your computer. Didn't have to wait for it to arrive in the mail. All right, so is your music in the clouds? So cloud music services, these are the ones that give you millions of songs to choose from. Some of them allow you to take your own music collection and upload it to the cloud, although that feature is starting to disappear. some services, Apple was the first one to do this, will match with a higher quality version. So if you upload to the music service a song that is of a lower quality, they will actually replace it with one of a higher quality. And then they give you the ability to listen to on a number of devices, and usually that number is 5 of your different devices, all the music that you've uploaded to the cloud. Now, there's disadvantages to the music cloud service. The process to move your music to the cloud can be very labor intensive, depending on your upload speed, which is always, for most of us, much slower than our download speed, and the size of your music collection. And typically you need an internet connection to listen to your music. So quickly, a recap of the online music services. Online streaming music services, I like to say this is where you rent the music. There's 2 levels. There's the free version. So any of these services that I'll mention by name in a bit, you can download the app and you can play, you can choose a genre and a song, but then the system kicks in and decides what they're going to play following the initial songs. And they then limit you to how many you can skip. But if you're willing to pay about $10 a month, then on a subscription basis, then you can pick and choose the genre and artist you like. You create these playlists, you can hear them on multiple devices, etc. And then there's the online music stores where you purchase the music, and these are becoming less and less popular. But you can purchase the music and download it, so now it's your music. Cost anywhere from 99 cents to about $1.99. And not all stores offer the highest quality downloads, and none offer all the music ever recorded, because if the music was not digitized, then the chances are it's not available to stream or download. And I do have a few albums in my collection that were never made into CDs. They were only available as vinyl, so you will not find them on any of the online music services. So what are the best music streaming services? That could be an entire presentation in itself, and I don't like to make those determinations myself because they're really up to the individual. But here's a CNET article that was titled last year, "The Best Music Streaming Services for 2020." And I'd bet you if you typed in now, "Best Music Streaming Services for 2021," you might even have a newer version of this from CNET. So Amazon Prime, that's the best for Amazon Prime members because that's a benefit that's included in your Prime membership. They boast anywhere from a 2 to a 5 million song catalog. Then they offer a fee-based Amazon, and it's called Amazon Music Unlimited. And that requires that's actually a 50 million song catalog. And these numbers increase all the time. Apple, of course, is the very best service for those committed to the Apple ecosystem. Now, the iTunes has been retired because they were just asking iTunes to do too much. So now Apple Music has replaced it, and it's called Apple Music has now replaced iTunes, and there's sister apps too, one for TV and one for podcasts. Google Play Music has also been retired, and that's now been replaced with the YouTube Music. And that's geared as well to those who enjoy watching music videos. Spotify is the largest music streaming service. They're headquartered in Sweden, and they have a neat feature. They offer not only the individual plans, but a family plan. So 6 family members can all be on the same plan and then the cost is only $15 a month. Pandora, like the others, has a free service as well. You put in a favorite artist, and you'll hear songs by that specific artist as well as similar. And then the last one I'm going to mention that was in this article is Tidal. And that's a high-end audio version. They say that what they stream is a much higher quality, so therefore they charge twice as much, about $20 a month. And this is a catalog that's really geared and videos to hip hop and R&B. So pros and cons of a music streaming service. Well, the advantages are you can listen to who else recorded a favorite song. Or you can listen to so many other songs by a favorite artist. And then the opportunity to be introduced to new artists that otherwise you might never hear. Access to millions and millions of recorded music songs. And other disadvantages? The free services have the limitations I mentioned before. Typically, you need an internet connection, although that's starting to change, where some services allow you to download playlists of the app for offline listening. But these songs cannot be copied to the device. They are in a special area where they're playable. And people were saying, gee, I'm going camping this weekend. I'm not going to have any internet service. So this is how these services provided the ability to download the music you want to hear when you're away from the internet. And of course, if you're not using Wi-Fi, then your monthly data allotment is being used. Now, who loves music streaming? Millennials. The younger music lovers have moved away from purchasing and collecting music media. They don't buy CDs, they don't do digital downloads. They prefer, what I like to say, renting their music from these online services. And they create their own playlist. They sort the music by genre, by tempo, by artist. They have so much more available to listen to. And let's face it, there are benefits. You don't have to worry about storage issues. You don't have to worry, am I going to damage a disc? Or is somebody going to steal this at the car wash? So how do singers, composers, and others get paid from streaming? It used to be simple. They would tally up how many 45 RPM records were sold or how many CDs were sold, and that would determine what the #1 song was in a particular time. And so anyway, the music streaming services, be they Spotify, Apple, Pandora, they receive income from two main sources. When they offer the free account, the advertisers pay that streaming service, and they're allowed to interrupt the music you are listening to with ads. And then the streaming account, the users pay the streaming service a monthly fee so they can choose the music they want to hear without interruption. Now, what the music streaming service pays the artists and others who are entitled to royalties is quite complicated and based on a variety of factors. But to make it really simple, I'm going to talk about Spotify as an example, and they pay their artist per stream 1 cent for every 3 plays. Now you might say 1 cent for every 3 plays. How much can that be? Well, the next slide is going to show you the top charting songs on Spotify recently, the artists behind them. And actually, this goes back a year ago. This is March of 2020, and the amount they earned from streaming. So here we see the top of the list, Justin Bieber, just for that one song called Yummy. And I have to admit, I've never heard it. But Yummy garnered him over $835,000. If we go down the list to #4, it's Justin Bieber, another song over $350,000. And right in the middle is Justin Bieber again with $132,000. So you can see just this one artist easily made over $1 million in estimated earnings a year ago on 3 songs based on the number of times people played it. So that's how the system works these days. So to stream or not to stream, that is the question. So I think you should consider streaming if you don't have a large collection of music, but would like to have access to favorite artists and millions of songs. I think you should consider it if you enjoy discovering new artists and their music. Maybe you're considering downsizing and you no longer want to have the responsibility to store and maintain a collection of vinyl or CDs. And let's face it, you're a person that listens to music every day and want to have it readily available using today's technology. Now, you don't need to stream, and this is probably where I put myself, although I do use Amazon Prime because I'm a member of that for other reasons. But you don't have an interest in today's new artists or the various pop music offerings. And listening to music daily is not an important aspect of your life. And maybe you've been collecting music for decades and already own all the music you ever want to hear. Well, that being the case, as I mentioned earlier, you should take the time to rip the music to your computer and then to portable devices that you can play anywhere. I want to mention just briefly 2 music apps that I have on my phone. One is called SoundHound and the other Shazam. They're very, very similar. And basically, if you hear a song playing, but you can't recall the name or the artist, you tap the SoundHound or Shazam button app on your phone. And as your phone is listening to the audio sound of the song, it'll come back within seconds and give you the song title, the artist's name. Often it'll provide lyrics. It'll give you a link if there's a video available on YouTube, and it'll give you names of the top songs from this artist and more. Also, I have an Android phone, and I didn't like what came with the phone as far as a music player. So I got something, particularly now that Google Music Play was retired. So I downloaded a free app called Music.ly, and that's my music player of choice for the songs saved on my phone. Again, I really don't stream, but I do like to carry my favorite 50,000 songs on the phone. And this way, this gives me the ability to search by voice. I can talk to my phone and tell them what song I want to hear. There's no ads, you don't need internet access, and they give you lots of extra little control. So Music.ly is my music player of choice. Now, I know some folks who've decided that the smart speaker for the home is all they need, whether it's the Amazon Echo, Google Home, Apple HomePod. They offer an increasing array of voice-activated functionality, and the more expensive models in this grouping have very, very high-end sound quality. So the software updates continue to make these devices more intelligent by giving new skills. They can start at the lower end. Amazon offers some styles coming in at below $50. They used to have one called the Amazon Tap, which I love. I still have. Why they discontinued it, I don't know. But what made it unique was you could either keep it plugged in all the time, or because it had a battery, you could carry it around the house. As long as you were in Wi-Fi range, you had your Echo with you at all times. So some people have made these high-end models their music system at home. Now, it just wouldn't be good enough to have a good presentation about this unless I mentioned YouTube music videos. So in the early days of rock and roll, long before the programs that came out later that provided music, the early days of rock and roll national TV programs, we all remember American Bandstand and variety shows like Ed Sullivan and Jackie Gleason. These were how we watched our favorite music icons. And then they had some movies that had a horrible storyline. Alan Freed was in many of these, the famous Cleveland and New York DJ. But they were the ability to showcase the rock and roll stars of the day. Fortunately, various archives have saved these clips over the decades and have uploaded them to YouTube. So while YouTube offers a music app service that you can pay for, most watch the free music-related videos with ads. And you'll find here current day concert footage. This is when we used to have in-person concerts from professionals or just individuals attending with their smartphone, and have then come home and uploaded what they were able to record to a YouTube site. Now, be very, very careful. YouTube can be habit forming. I can tell you more than once, I've told my wife, I'll be coming to bed in a little while, and the next thing I know, the sun is rising. All right, so just a few bullet points from CNET, what they think about today's opportunities to listen to music, that digital downloads that once ruled the music industry now make less money than CDs and vinyl records. Downloads only were 11% last year. That's actually probably 2019. Now, while CD sales continue, vinyl record sales are going up. Now, of course, that's going up by a relatively small percentage of the total music industry. Streaming sales have now accounted for more than 75% of revenue. And people are willing to pay the monthly fee for all you can access, like Spotify and Apple Music, or they listen for free and listen to the advertisements. But the music industry, which was on its heels a few years ago, is now coming back with its best sales growth in years. So here's a question I often ask folks. Can you still be considered a collector if you do not buy the music? Let's think about that. So I've asked this question, and my younger friends will say yes. These are the ones who are committed to streaming. They'll say yes because I use playlist. I organize my music by genre and artist, other categories. I do that with my music online, just as somebody who might physically do it with who owns the media. They take the same care, and they say maybe more, with keeping my music organized. And then with playlists, they feel they have a collection of the music they care about. Then there's no, and I probably fall into this category. If you don't own the media, as you do with CDs and vinyl records, etc., and even downloads, then you're not really a collector. With digital rights protection, you're not able to copy the music to a device. And to me, most importantly, the word collector implies you own something, while paying a monthly fee infers you are renting. So are LPs taking us back to the future? According to Rolling Stone magazine, the sale of vinyl records in 2020 generated more annual income than compact discs for the first time since 1986. I'm going to repeat that. The sale of vinyl records last year in 2020 generated more income than compact discs for the first time since 1986. So while the CD sales are declining 3 times as fast, vinyl is growing. Now, again, a reality check reminds us streaming is the most popular way to consume music. Over 80% the revenues come from streaming. But are LPs taking us back to the future? Something old and something new. Even the new LPs and vinyl records that are being issued, they're not just plain old black. I mean, here's a Megan Trainor, who is one of my more favorite contemporary artists, and bright white with a pink label. And I have several other records that have all kinds of designs on the actual disc. So I found you can have your cake and eat it too. So today's modern phonographs, they connect to the standard RCA inputs, the red and white connections, without the need for the higher amplification photo connection that was used years ago on older receivers. And they have a switch on the back, so they can either be attached to the older version or the newer version. And look at this turntable. You can purchase one like this that has actually a USB cable connected to it. And what you do is you connect that USB cable to your computer, and while you are playing the record on the turntable, it's automatically recording the song in real time to your computer as an MP3 file. And I found that when I buy some of the newer LP albums, they contain a one-time use code that allows me to immediately download all the songs on the album as MP3 files while I'm waiting for the LP itself to arrive in the mail. Now I'm going to this a little bit, Have Music Will Travel, and this is going to talk a little bit about music in the car. I've had so many positive responses about this, and I've been asked by people, Ray, I just bought a new car and it doesn't have a CD player. I can't return the car. What should I do? So I'm actually in the process of creating a new video, which will talk about music in the car. I'm probably going to showcase this in May at our next virtual conference. But here's Have Music Will Travel.
So I'm going to go to the audio section of this. It's my wife Carol's music, and we were listening to Rod Stewart. But let's change that to, imagine I'm driving. I don't want to touch the monitor there, so I just press the button on the steering column.
Please say a command.
Play artist Garth Brooks.
Please say a line number, or say none of those.
Line 1.
Playing artist Garth Brooks.
comes up now. It started playing automatically. I didn't have to really touch anything. If I want to see what other songs are available for Garth Brooks, I tap the word browse. I could say these songs, but if I'm sitting watching, I could just scroll right down. Here's a song we all like, Shameless. And that quick, Shameless is playing. So I was talking to a friend recently who had a similar car, and I asked him if how he liked using the USB connectors, and he told me his car didn't have one. And I said, of course it does. We have the same model car. And he swore up and down. So we were at dinner. After dinner, I walked to his car. I opened up his console here, pointed to where the USB connection was, and his words were, "Oh my God, I've had this car for 2 years and I never knew I had that." So if anybody of you are out there who actually have the USB connection, it is so nice to just be able to rip your CDs to your computer and then save them to your flash drive, and then the computer in your car will do all the determining of what the song title is and find it for you and play it with very little effort on your part. Okay, so let's bring us to today's technology. I want to show you two apps that I think are really useful and you might enjoy. First one is called Discogs. Discogs, DISCOGS.com. And it's a database where you input the album information that you have. It can be an LP, it can be a CD, it could be a 40. You put it in and it'll come back and keep it in your database with your name, but then it'll tell you. So here's an example. I have the Bob Dylan album Blood on the Tracks. It's telling me that it came out in 1975 on Columbia. A bad copy is $8, but a really good clean copy is $160, and the average price is about $20. So when I edit it, and I can give it some information as to what I think the condition is of either the media itself or the covers. I know I have 473 albums in it, and maybe about $3,000. So this gives you a wonderful way to determine what your any of your music media is worth these days. So this is Musically, it's my music player. I used to use Windows Media Player quite a bit, but found that as my collection got larger and larger, Windows Media Player just couldn't handle it. It was too large. It was constantly trying to update. MusicBee is a much better program. It has all my music. It's reading it from what's stored on this computer. I can just type in an artist's name over here. And as an example, I typed in Toby Keith before, and up comes all the different Toby Keith songs that I have in my database. And via Bluetooth, it's coming out of my main speakers and stereo unit in the loft here. So we've come quite a way from the 78 RPM record to today, and I just love it that I can have access to so much music and so many songs just with a few clicks on the keyboard. So another nice feature that you can add to when you're playing the song is to have the lyrics moving along with the song. I've never been a big lyric fan because I haven't focused on them, but when I can see them now appearing, then it makes it so much better.
Okay.
Ray, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're going to lose our room here in a minute.
This is the last slide.
Okay.
And I'll go fast.
All right. There we go.
How many times can you buy the song Heartbreak Hotel? Well, I've listed basically all the different ones that we've talked about today. Believe it or not, this album is still available. You can buy it today, brand new, Amazon, only $33. And it's the 60th anniversary of Elvis.
Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new.
And that's it.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you. Let me stop sharing. Thank you.
That was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I wish we had another half hour or so we could field questions, but I'm sorry, we're running a little late.
Well, Scott, if you get questions from your folks there, email them to me, please, and I will be happy to answer each and every one of them.
I will do that. If you have any of your presentation you want to make available as a file, send it on. Otherwise, I want to tell everybody I will record this presentation, and we should have it up on our YouTube channel by tomorrow.
Great. You know, if you would do me the favor, send me the link to that. I'd love to have that as well for my own records.
Will do. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. Stay safe. We'll see you next week where we will, and Jack, you'll enjoy this because you have a nice starry background. We'll be learning about stargazing. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Forward to it.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was excellent. I can't wait to watch it again.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Thumbs up from Jack, too.
Good job.